Welcome to the latest episode of Branding the Experience. We discuss ways how we can create environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. I am Ken Bader, your host for Branding the Experience, and our subject today, negative branding rarely works. Some of you may remember a number of years ago, I wrote an article that was titled, Is it okay to bash another brand? I may have the title wrong, but I know that was the gist of the piece that I wrote. I think it was in 2014. I think I'll put a link to that in the show notes here. But yeah, in general, I hate negative branding. As I said in the article, that it's rare that negative branding works. Now, I gave examples, that a lot of times, when I was a kid, you'd see those advertisements, those commercials from Burger King, talking about, how McDonald's and Wendy's fry, bashing both McDonald's and Wendy's, but we grill and it's much better and so forth. I always even thought then it's like, well, why don't you talk about the great things that Burger King does? Now, there is a theory out there that if you're going after the top brand, that it's okay to bash that number one brand if you're number two, number three, number four. I don't necessarily agree with that. I encourage my clients all over the place in different industries. It's very rare that I'll condone, let's go after that competitor. I would much rather talk about how we are different, what we're doing to make a difference, what we're doing, even without mentioning that competitor, that's better than that other institution, that other organization. Where I see a lot of negative branding and bashing is in political arenas. As many of you know, I also do public safety talk radio. I'm the CEO of the POCUA. So while I try to stay out of politics, public safety obviously is very top of mind and very important to me. And I saw a perfect example. I like to share examples on the show to teach people what to do and what not to do. I normally like to have positive examples of branding. Unfortunately, I've got to share a negative example from the political arena right here where I live in Long Beach, California. We're going through a mayoral race right now, and I hadn't made my decision as to who to vote for mayor. I even saw this particular piece in the mail. It's the Cops Voters Guide that came to my house, which talked about all of the candidates in different races that the Long Beach Police Department is endorsing. Now, granted, being a huge supporter of law enforcement, this is going to carry some weight for me. And they endorsed Suzie Price. And I had been thinking about voting for Suzie Price because she happens to be my councilwoman here in my neighborhood. I've met Suzie Price. I don't always agree with her decisions, but I always appreciate the logic that she comes with. And that's what I look for in any leader, not just in politics. I may not agree with you, but give me the thought process. Don't just tell me, well, this is what I had to do, or get on board with it. There's always a logic involved to what she did in our neighborhood, whether I agreed with it or not. And one thing that I always did agree with is her perspective on homelessness. We have a major homeless problem here in Long Beach and Los Angeles County in general. And I do have some empathy for homeless folks, but not at the expense of tax-paying citizens that are in danger because of the homeless problem. So I always appreciated Suzie Price's perspective on allowing homeless to just live on streets and in parks is not the humane solution. That we need to provide care for these folks But in the same time that we need to have a quality of life perspective on this, that people that are paying taxes, that are paying their mortgage, and just simply want to walk down the street with their family and not hear swearing, not feel in fear because there's somebody that's mentally ill getting in their face, that they have a right to be safe. To get back to my point on negative branding, I received this from the office of Rex Richardson, who is currently the vice mayor, who is also running for mayor. And it's a highly negative ad. Yeah, it talks about Suzie Price, doesn't say anything about what Rex does or how he's had any accomplishments or so forth. And again, I hadn't made my decision until I saw this ad. And it's a perfect example of negative branding and bashing working against you, because all the things that he says here that are supposed to be a negative to the other candidate, Suzie Price, such as I could read a number of things here, but the number one thing that he puts in this ad is Suzie Price made her views clear when she said Long Beach families and neighbors are choosing to be homeless. And you know what? That's something that I believe, and that's something that some homeless experts will tell you, that some people choose to be homeless. Some people have made some very poor choices that have gotten them to that situation. I certainly believe that as a public safety advocate that they deserve help, but a choice of just staying on the streets and being an issue for tax-paying citizens that want to be safe is not an option. So thank you, Rex Richardson. You made up my mind due to this negative ad that my vote is going to go to Suzie Price. And that is a good example of how negative branding, can work against you. Why? And it brings me to a question. Why would you even think about putting this in people's mailboxes? It doesn't serve you well. It doesn't talk about how you're different, how your views are better. All it does is serve to be negative and bash somebody else. And I could tell you that I don't want to work with a leader like that. I would not suggest that type of branding for any of my clients. And I certainly don't want you as my mayor in the city of Long Beach. And kudos to Suzie Price, who always comes with logic and brands herself in a very, very positive way, and has since I've known her. So let's use this as an example. Let's get away from the politics for a minute and understand, how that makes people feel. I think that when you go down the negative route, even if you were correct, and I don't think that was the case in the example that I gave, when you go down the negative route, you're making people feel negative. You're digging into anger rather than into a positive emotion, which I think is almost always a poor way to brand your particular business. And I'll close this particular episode with a conversation that I recently had with a police chief, actually Chief Roy Minter of the Savannah Police Department, which will come out in late June in Public Safety Talk Radio, where he used a quote from Maya Angelou that people will remember the way that you make them feel. And if you make them feel good about you, about your business, about their choice in working with you, that's almost always going to be a positive. When you open with a negative, you're working from a negative. You're already working from a minus. And that's tough to recover from. So I urge you to consider positive branding at least 99% of the time. Look at your differentiators. Look at what makes you better than your competitor and state that without even mentioning your competitor, because people will know. So stay away from negative branding And here's hoping, as always, that you're branding the experience at a very high level for all those you serve. Events are back in full swing. I'm actually heading to my fourth conference in at least as many months so far in 2022. I'm overjoyed to be fully back in business after the pandemic, and it would be a privilege to be a part of your next event. Do you need a speaker for your next conference? Maybe a facilitator for your next strategic planning or training session? A full program with expert panelists and interactive exercises for attendees? Or maybe you need an MC for your next event. I'm here to help and have the expertise to be a part of an amazing agenda for your audience. Learn more about Bader Training and Consulting at www.btcinc.net, or better yet, just contact me directly at kbader@btcinc.net, and let's talk about your next event, next training session, or next summit.